We're just two people. They're totally different personalities, giftings, careers, but they're linked together. So this idea of interdependence. And so it's the idea, reminder, we're supposed to do life together. So I only have very limited subset of strengths, but when I can link up with others, it's amazing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the No Easy Way Out podcast. My name is Tony, and we are coming to you as always from the Armory in beautiful downtown Owosso, home to my company AZ Business Solutions, where we help grow your brand from A to Z. Now I'm joined today by one of my favorite people, Dr. Dave Skjaerlund. Dr. Dave, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you. It's awesome.
So I got a little bio here. I'm going to read a little bit out. Dr. Dave is a very accomplished, I'm just going to call you Dave from here on out, but everyone else will know you as Dr. Dave. But Dave is an extremely accomplished man, and I'm going to read a little bit about some of his background here, and then we'll get into the podcast. Dave Skjaerlund graduated from Kalamazoo College, receiving the Outstanding Senior Biology Major Award, completed his PhD from Michigan State University in Animal Science with specialized training in molecular biology, and has published over 15 specific journal articles in the area of growth biology of muscle proteins. I mean, I barely passed, basic level science there, so that's impressive. Marcia, his wife, a high school valedictorian, attended Oral Roberts University with honors, received her DO from Michigan State University at 23 years of age, and served as a gastroenterologist for over 25 years. Both David and Marcia have completed various ministry training programs as well as pastoral equipping schools. So two smart people in the same home. That must have been some fun conversations.
We were a paradox.
Yes, I can imagine. Dr. Dave Skjaerlund has served as the executive director of the Society for Creation Science, an organization that supported local chapters on college campuses, which engaged in issues around the issue of creation and evolution. He is the author of the book Creation/Evolution, Understanding the Issues at Hand, as well as other columns and papers on the foundational subject. Dr. Skjaerlund has served in various church leadership roles, including co-leading Morning Star Christian Church in East Lansing in Michigan here. Dr. Skjaerlund coordinated and co-led 6 leadership trips for campus mission leaders to encounter Israel for a 4-week intensive Bible study experience. Now, I've been to Israel. That is a one-of-a-kind experience, and I recommend that everybody listening, if you ever have the chance to go to Israel, it is a must-do trip. It is awesome, especially if you're a lover of the Bible, because reading your Bible will never be the same after visiting Israel. It was an incredible experience.
Living history.
Absolutely. And here in America, you see things that are 200 years old. You go there and you see things that are 2,000 years old, still standing, and it's just incredible. But let's see. Dr. Skjaerlund has served on the leadership team for unique missionary trips to the nations of Sierra Leone, Peru, Bolivia, Venezuela, and Colombia. He organized the Traverse City Leader Development Program, a 3-year effort to equip local leaders in establishing and living a kingdom culture that transforms the world around them. Dr. Skjaerlund is also a writer, a speaker, capturing revelations on the King and his kingdom and articulating kingdom paradigms related to daily living, relational leadership, church community, nation building, and kingdom transformation. Also had some public policy experience. He has served as a policy advisor in the Executive Office of the Michigan Department of Agriculture and as the director of the MDA's Office of Policy Implementation within the Michigan Department of Agriculture, with responsibility to develop legislative initiatives related to property tax reform, environmental stewardship, land use policies, agricultural development, and agribusiness enhancement. You also we were kind of involved a little bit together with putting some policy together at the beginning of the pandemic that was designed to help the legislature with some of the things that they were experiencing, and actually made it to the House floor. He served as the coordinator of Governor Engler's Farmland and Agricultural Development Task Force in 1994, and is principal author of the report Policy Recommendations and Options for the Future Growth of Michigan Agriculture. Dr. Skjaerlund is the principal author of the Michigan Society of Planning Officials Agricultural Trends Working Paper, 110 pages, documenting current land use trends and the impact on agriculture, and author of the report Use Value Assessment, a 50-state comparison and analysis of agricultural and property tax policies across the nation. He is also the author of 6 professional journal articles in land use planning and zoning. So you've been around a little bit. You've done a few things. And then I should read a little bit about your family life here. David and his late wife, Marcia, have learned the goodness and faithfulness of God in both mountaintop experiences and in the valley seasons, including the death of a brother while mountain climbing, financial difficulties, leadership and relational changes, assisting aging parents, and recovering from stage 4 lung cancer with a diagnosis of only a month or 2 to live. Through it all, they have learned that God upholds Romans 8:28 in accordance with Ephesians 3:20-21 because of Ephesians 3:14 through 19. They cherish faith, family, and friends while enjoying the beauty of life. The Skjaerlund family enjoys recreating in the 4 seasons, whether skiing, snowboarding, kayaking, sailing, tubing, running, or hiking, mountain climbing, hunting, fishing, photography, or a good family game of basketball, football, or paintball. You guys do a lot. They love the creative and performing arts and enjoy conversing and laughing with friends around the table of good cuisine. So, Dave, you are a well-rounded individual, my friend. You've been involved in a lot of things. It sounds like you've thus far lived a very rich and full life. So, once again, thank you for being here and taking the time to sit with me and talk with me. And we just love to converse anyways, but this will give my audience a little exposure to who you are and why I love you so much.
That's great.
So we met just over a year ago, actually, for the first time. I think we had ran into each other at different community events, but we never really officially met till about a year ago. A mutual friend of ours, Gordon Pennington, he invited me to a meeting at your newly redeveloped, and we'll get into that, the Z Hall, to meet some people from the west side of the state who had started a Facebook group called Michiganders Against Excessive Quarantine, which I had seen online, but I didn't know anything about it. I get invited to a lot of things by Gordon, and so I choose which things I want to go to and which things I don't. And I was kind of on the fence, and then I found out Chef Jeff was cooking, so I was like, well, if Chef Jeff's cooking, it's going to be a good meal. So I decided to go, and that day we met a few people that we had all met on the same day. We met Dr. Garrett Soldano, we met Kevin Skinner, we met Ron Armstrong, and a few other people who were all just patriots trying to do something to understand what was happening with this pandemic and what we could do to help and what we could do to help small businesses. And that was a cause that all of us believed in, right? We all thought, we want to help people get through this. We want to help people that are hurting. I mean, people were sending in stories by the scores of things that were happening to them and their family and in their businesses. And so hearing those stories, we all wanted to help. And so we got together and we spent for probably a good 6-8 weeks. We spent a lot of time together just trying to help formulate policy, get websites going, help small businesses like our friend Carl Mankey, who was trying to stay open and was getting a lot of criticism. And then they were just trying to figure out, what do we turn this Facebook group that has 500,000 people following, what do we turn this into? And so we kind of helped them formulate an organization out of it. And so then we kind of did that for a little while, and we became really good friends, and we had some late nights right here in the Armory editing some news stories with Zach and traveling to Lansing and doing all kinds of things because we're patriots and we love our state and we love our people, and we just wanted to do that. So kind of met under unusual circumstances, but I consider you a wonderful friend, and again, just appreciate having you here today. So why don't you let's talk a little bit about that first day when we met. When you were asked was Gordon the one that asked you to host the meeting? Or
yeah, we were all trying to figure out a way to understand the current situation with COVID, understand how to move forward, especially with all the different governor's orders that were coming down and the impact of those. And so, obviously we weren't alone. Everybody was trying to figure out what this was all about. So for me as a scientist, I looked at it from a scientific and a medical perspective in terms of what was happening. And then when public policy started development, then all my public policy background looked at it. And, it was just hard to understand. So everybody was trying to say, well, what makes sense? What's happening? So, those are things that, gosh, it's been a year now. But if you think of back then, it was just hard to understand. I could go and buy light bulbs in one aisle of Home Depot, but then I walked in and I couldn't buy my paint because that aisle was blocked off.
Or landscaping supplies.
Or I could go to Walmart, but I couldn't go out to the garden center.
Right.
Or, I could put my kayak in, but heaven forbid I put a motor on my boat.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even go to my other properties because I have properties across the state, so I couldn't even legally go look at my other properties that I had.
Right.
Because I had to just stay in my home or go to the grocery store. So all of this, I mean, that was
travel.
just, people were just trying to figure out, what do we do with this? And I think that was part of that meeting, was just, gosh, we're not alone in this.
Right.
There's a lot of other people out there asking the same questions. So how do we move forward?
Yeah, there was really no real answer of what we're supposed to do. Certainly there was no precedent for what was happening. And so we're all just trying to take what we know of the Constitution, what we know of practical wisdom, and what we know of, and just trying to make it all make sense. And, at that first couple of weeks, or, really 2 months, it just seemed like, we just were 24 hours a day around the clock trying to do things. Because
it was great to be with people. I think that was the biggest fruit out of it, is that the more that we can have discussion, the more that we can talk about ideas, the more that we can work together, the more that we can interact and relate. I mean, that's part of life.
Yes, sir.
So that was just, you guys are amazing, your whole team, and just everybody, in terms of discussing what our options were.
Yeah.
How do we navigate it? How do we help businesses that are shut down?
Right.
Businesses like my own, I mean, they were devastating times. So,
well, and that brings me to what I want to focus the majority of our conversation on today is the Z Hall. You had just decided, you had been working on it for a while and just opened. What was it, in March that you had opened or supposed to open?
Yeah, we actually bought the Z Hall June of 2019, did a very extensive remodel of the entire facility. It was the old ZCBJ Hall, otherwise known in Owosso by many as the Alphabet Hall.
The Alphabet Hall.
So
yeah, because at one time it said ZCBJ on the building, and then it had a canvas that said like WFLA. Yes, it's like, how many letters?
That's right. So the ZCBJ was Czechoslovakian words for Western Fraternal Life Association.
Ah, okay.
So it was all these acronyms that everybody called it the Alphabet Hall. So we narrowed it down to the Z Hall and bought it, remodeled it in June, the second half of 2019. Then I got our liquor license and our food permits all transferred. So we were ready to do our grand opening and move forward first part of March of 2020.
It's a great time to open a business.
So yeah, you inferred that perhaps there was some brilliance associated with me, but not really.
Maybe not in that. Well, none of us could have predicted. None of us could have predicted there.
That timing was really unfortunate.
Well, did you have events and weddings lined up already?
Oh, we had things booked.
Yeah.
So we were booking as we were kind of remodeling and life that was coming forward. So we end up being restricted pretty much all of 2020. We only did 2 weddings the entire year. Most of the other events, we did some creative things outside, but pretty much everybody was not holding any gatherings, any events, organizations, businesses, all of the things that you normally do to meet together. Those were all shut down.
Yeah.
So it was certainly a very zero revenue year. Plus, you still had all the expenses, and then we had all our remodel capital improvements.
Absolutely.
So it was. It's been a very difficult year, and for us, it was challenging because all the state and federal grants were dependent on 2019 income.
Right.
So as a new operational entity, we didn't qualify for it. We haven't gotten any state or federal grants at all.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of, it was, I think, putting small businesses in a perspective that I could relate to on a personal level, but also to relate to other business owners.
Yeah.
That gave me a good perspective, obviously.
Yeah. Well, you guys are open now, open today. You're hosting events, and tell our audience a little bit about what are some of the things that the Z Hall offers.
Yeah, so we are the last industry to really be open. So a lot of businesses have been open, retail stores have been open for quite a while, but any type of social events, wedding venues, those type of things really have not been open until now. They're still at 50% capacity until the end of the month, but yeah, so we're back to celebrating life, doing life.
Yeah.
So really the Z Hall, let me give you just a bigger picture on it. It's The way I describe the Z Hall is it's kind of a unique place. It's a unique place by itself. It's got some unique history. It goes back 100 years, back to 1916, where the Czechoslovakian community formed it. And it really has been a hub over the years of a lot of social activity and a central place for people to come together. So weddings, funerals, dances, high school proms. I remember so many events that my kids went to back when it was still functional. So it really served as this kind of place, as a social gathering place. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's really part of its unique call. It's got a very unique character in terms of the structure and the building of the bones of the building. But to serve as a place where people can come together and to celebrate life, that's really the function. So we try to create that special place, a celebration that's more than just a rental hall. It could be, so we do the smaller events, such as the weddings, the funerals, the birthdays, the bridal showers, the graduation open houses. But we also we serve the businesses. So a lot of times we'll do strategic business meetings or staff appreciation, employee appreciation type events or conferences. Then we also serve nonprofits in the community, organizations, so maybe fundraisers, other those type of events that they do as their key, yearly events. And then we obviously do a lot of weddings, especially on Saturdays during the prime season. So it's really this place where it's a cross-section of the community that's been fascinating. Yeah. So we really get a touch point with so many different people, families, organizations, businesses. And we're there to provide a great place, provide food, provide service. But we really want to function on that relational connection, a place where you come, enjoy the relational connectivity, spend time together, do life together. That's really what I believe is why that place exists.
Yeah. And you have Michigan's largest wooden dance floor, right?
We do. Yeah. And we're still home to the Michigan Polka Hall of Fame. Yeah, so I've got a few lessons that I need to take. But yes, it used to be lots of polka dances that went on. And so we're still honoring that legacy. And we still honor all the members that were inducted into the Michigan Polka Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Well, when you go into the Z Hall, there's a big lettering up on the wall that says celebrating life through love. So tell our audience a little bit what that means to you and what that represents.
Yeah, that's part of a life message, I think, that's been developed over the years, but it certainly applies to the Z Hall. And it's this idea that, when you stand at the edge of eternity and you're looking at the sunset of life, it really comes down to one of the most important things that is there is relationships. We can always look back at what we've accomplished. We can always look back at jobs and positions and titles and careers and accolades. But when you're at the sunset stage of life or standing at the edge of eternity, relationship is really all that matters. Yeah. And it's life that happens. It's a relationship with God, obviously in the present, but also moving forward. But it's also the relationship with others, whether that's family or friends or just connections and coworkers. And so it's this idea that's what life is about. And love is the really key essence of it. Everything flows out of love. All of life does. And so it's just this idea that we really are supposed to celebrate life. And we celebrate it through love. So that's what we've got etched in stone out front. It also comes off of Ephesians 3:14 through 21, where it says that God loves us. Look at the depth and the breadth and the depth and the height of love is. But yet, because of that, God can do far more. So We're living in Father's extravagance in humanity. That's what we're created to do. And so we just want to have that adventure. We want to have that celebration. And Z Hall is a great place to do that.
Absolutely. Well, if you haven't been there, you got to go check it out. It is absolutely stunning. The remodel, rehab, whatever you want to call it, you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Everyone that I've walked in, we just did our school where my kids go, did their annual awards banquet there. And everybody that walked in, all the adults were like, wow, this looks amazing. I mean, they didn't expect to see, because the last time I was there was probably in the early 90s. So it was just a complete transformation. So what would you want our audience, most importantly, what would you want them to know about the Z Hall?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a great place, as you mentioned. The last remodel was 50 years ago, but we've completely, I think it's a unique space.
For sure.
we call it a hybrid. It's kind of that rustic elegance. So it's got the brick and the stones, but it's got that ballroom elegance and special setting. We've completely redone the garden. It's amazing. It's a sculpture garden. We've got 500 different flowering plants in there. They're just amazing. So it's really a unique place of celebration. That's kind of our tagline, a place of celebration. But we also do great food there. Our service and our staff team is amazing. It's a great experience. So it's meant to be that special place. It's not like an everyday rental but just creating a special place for that event of celebration, whatever it might be.
Any kind of special event you have happening in your life or even in your business, it's a good place to celebrate that.
And we're also doing some other things that we do that's open to the public, some themed events. So just to try to celebrate that for the public. So whether that's Valentine's Day or Palm Sunday dinner, Mother's Day dinner, do a harvest festival. We're doing a Summer in the Garden series where you come, there's live music, sit out in the garden on Wednesday nights and just
enjoy life.
We find people spend a couple hours there just because they haven't seen people and they just relax. So we're not trying to turn tables. It's it's the experience.
Well, and you guys can really accommodate a variety of size of parties, like you said. And even with the weddings, you have a whole suite set aside for the bridal party to get ready. And so it's really, really well thought out and really well done. And someone that used to work in the hospitality business for 10 years and has been a part of a lot of wedding ceremonies. And I just find it to be very, very well, like I said, well thought out, well put together, and it's a beautiful space. And if you're looking for an event that is unique and is different, the Z Hall is a good place to look into because they have a lot of different options. And the garden is awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. For weddings, we do outdoor ceremonies in the gardens. We can do indoor ceremonies as well. Then we have a bridal suite and full service catering. So we do everything that it really makes it a stress-free day for folks.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how you got to become the owner of the Z Hall, because you've had a very, very accomplished life. And you still are doing a lot of different things. It's not you're wearing many hats still. You told us a little bit about the history of the Z Hall, but what was it that made you decide, I'm going to kind of shift gears from what I've been doing all these years, and you have a lot of degrees, and you've done, like I said, you've done a lot of big things. What made you decide to want to go into this new venture and give the Z Hall some new life?
That's a good question. I think it's a number of things over the years. Obviously, we had some history as our family going to events there at the ZCBJ Hall. And we knew a great couple, Kathy, Jeffrey, who stepped in, tried to resurrect the hall, and really wanted to bring life back to that community. And the community, the Czech community, the community as a whole is Owosso. So part of it was a relational connection, just realizing what was the opportunity there. But I think in a deeper question, it's a number of things. It's as simple. I've been involved in agriculture all my life. I own a 1,200-acre farm. So growing food at the field level, but then understanding what it takes to take it all the way to the table.
Right.
And so realizing part of that is, the experience of having it at the table level experience of agriculture, which is why it's one of the largest industries in Michigan. But I think I have to go back to my mom. My mom and dad came over from Denmark in 1950s. And so they had an accent, didn't know English, just worked their way through. But mom had this gift of hospitality that was amazing. And she would host international students from the University of Michigan. We had a farm down by Ann Arbor. And we would have people out all the time around the table. For Thanksgiving, we had maybe 20 people sitting around a Thanksgiving table. And she would buy a flag from their country, and she'd have it on the table every time they were there. And this awesome. Gift of hospitality is amazing. So when she passed away and I counted the number of flags, there was 34 different countries that had sat at her table, just bacon, Danish food, Danish pastries, just hospitality. So I think that's was just that whole field of hospitality and knowing what it was just to relationally connect.
Yeah.
And then she taught me how to bake, so that's part of the reason I Side note was I got champion homemaker at Michigan State Fair one year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the seeds I think that were sown,
Yeah.
and plus doing a lot working at the meat lab. So I was coach of the Michigan State University meat judging team.
Yeah.
And yes, there is a university competition on meat judging, but I participated in that and coached it. So I just think those seeds were sown, and then probably from the wedding venue kicked it in was my daughter's wedding. So we toured 10 different venues, looking at wedding venues, and then it ended up on my farm. So we did all the hospitality of having it at your own place, and then we hosted another wedding at the farm, and so that just kind of got the ideas turning, and then that met up with the opportunity to, it was at a point where something needed to be done with the hall.
Yeah.
And so I just said, well, we'll see what God's going to do.
Well, I'm glad that you did it. And we've been a part of a couple events there, and I'm sure we'll be a part of many more. And again, if you're in the area, I think you need to check it out and go. If you have an event coming up of any kind, give them a call and check it out. I think you will love what they've done with the place. So, what did you do directly before? Like, you're definitely not a person who seems like they can just do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I can relate with that a little bit. I always got a lot of things going. I get. If I have downtime, like I have two speeds. Like I have either let's run 1,000 miles an hour and try to stay ahead of everything and juggle as many balls as we can juggle, or like if I get north of Clare in Michigan here, I can just do nothing, like sit there and just veg out. And I can do that for about a day, and then I'm like, all right, I got to be productive again. So I have this I don't know if sometimes it can be a good quality, sometimes it can be a very bad quality. But I have a hard time just sitting still. I always want to be busy, always want to be accomplishing something. I always feel like there's so many things to do. And it seems like you have that a little bit. So what were you doing right before this leading up to that?
Well, Tony, when you get older, you get a little wiser.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so.
So anyway, just from the standpoint of it, so yes, I can relate to what you're talking about, and that's part of the reason out in the garden we have this statue of an eagle. It's a big granite statue of an eagle, and it's just a reminder to me that an eagle, and it's taken me a while to learn it, but an eagle, you rarely see it flapping its wings.
Right.
So it's tapping into the current, the winds, what's actually going on, and the eagle goes long distances without having to spend a lot of energy. Yeah. And so I've had to learn over the years, how do I go places while adding more rest in my life? And so that's been a journey. That doesn't mean I don't do a lot of things, but
yeah, absolutely, we know you do.
It's an interesting perspective. No, I did a lot of business ventures. We there was a season there where I was we were trying to build an ethanol plant up in Ithaca. Mm-hmm. It's now been developed or redesigned. It's now hosting Zealand Farm Services soybean plant that's up there. So if you go up to Ithaca where all the wind farms are at, and you see it that's a big soybean processing plant. But that was a season where we were putting in that as an ethanol plant. There's some other business ventures that I've done, some real estate development stuff. Helping some folks with a luxury bag line, trying to do some different things. So I've always had a kind of a mix between business ventures, in addition to the 1,200 acre farm, business ventures, public policy involvement, but then also a lot of ministry. Yeah. And so that's just seamless in terms of
good balance. Yeah, good balance. Well, I have a very strong passion for ministry as well, and I've always tried to have that be the central part of what I do. I try to make sure that all the things around me facilitate my ability to be able to minister to my community, to minister to my family, to minister to those around me. And I think we share that in common. At the heart of all that we do, we have this passion and heart to really share the gospel of Jesus Christ with people and help them on that journey. So, so it's been good. I think it's been a good life, and I think you've done some really good things. But right now, I want to slowly transition. We're just going to harshly transition to this segment that our audience loves called "Explain That Post." And I'm going to text you a picture right now to your phone. So normally we do a deep dive on our guest social media page, and we try to find some sort of incriminating, embarrassing photo that needs more context. And you just There wasn't anything. You're not real active on your personal social media. So I went on the Z Hall social media, and again, everything's really beautiful pictures. But I found this picture of this statue. Our audience can see this, and I've seen these in the Z Hall. There's a couple of these, so I thought it would be a good opportunity for you to tell our audience what these statues represent. And I know there's a video that's been produced by our very own Jordan Sovis. We'll put that in the podcast here. We'll play that so people can to see that as well. But tell our audience what those statues are and what they represent.
Well, one of the things that I love to do, I just appreciate art. I appreciate music. I appreciate art. That's one of the reasons why I host dinner shows, or like the Dinner in the Garden. We have live music, because I think the arts and entertainment side of life gives us a different perspective of the creativity of humanity.
For sure.
And part of it's, there's the biblical reference in Genesis that says God's the creator, but he says, let's create them in our image. Yep. So it's the idea that you're the creative element. You guys are amazing. I mean, just what you do with brands and, videos and things, that's part of that creative expression. So at the Z Hall, we have a lot of different artistic expressions. It's paintings, unique paintings, it's sculptures in the garden. And inside in the great room is these bronze sculptures that you've highlighted, and they're 1,200 pounds a piece. They're limited edition sculpture. It's by a guy who used to be a grad. He got his PhD from Michigan State. He lives out in Washington State now. But they're just amazing stories for me, that I call them the sculptures of humanity.
Yeah.
And to me, they have a life message, and especially being a chaplain. But in the hall, I tell the story. There's a snippet of Michelangelo where God touched humanity. But then there's two statues, and they just represent relationships. Like one of them that's there in the corner is this idea of two becoming one. So you see out of this earth, it shapes a male and female, but two people becoming one, the idea of intimacy. And that one, it's back to back. Normally we think intimacy is face to face, but I just think it's a reminder relationally that sometimes we have to cover one another's back, that maybe sometimes they don't deserve it. I don't know if anybody's ever been in that place.
For sure.
And then the other one is we're just two people. They're totally different personalities, giftings, careers, but they're linked together. So this idea of interdependence. And so it's the idea, reminder, we're supposed to do life together. So I only have very limited subset of strengths, but when I can link up with others, it's amazing to see who they are and what they do, and to link those together. And then there's a third one in the series that's empowerment, this idea of lifting up one another. What do we do to highlight other people, culture of honor? So they're just great artistic works of arts by themselves. Yeah. But most everything at the Z has a story behind it that for me is part of the reason why I bought it and display it.
Yeah. Well, they're very, very cool. All right. Well, thank you for explaining those to us. And like I said, we'll put the video in here so people can see that and get the full context. But I want to talk about, with all of my guests, now that we're 2021 here, they say hindsight is 2020. That never ring more true than today. But if you're a business owner, which most of my guests are, 2020 had an impact. Some it impacted in a very positive way as far as financially. I don't think it impacted anybody necessarily positively from that standpoint, but some people had business growth through that time because their industry was affected differently. But then some people now are experiencing a dip now as things are starting to slowly get back to pre-COVID times. And so we'd like to talk about the impact that 2020 had on businesses during that time and on individuals. And so I know we hit on a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about what was going through your mind when you're just opening, you've done all this work, and then I think it was March 15th, our governor comes out, and we'd already been hearing about this, this new novel coronavirus that was impacting, but it didn't seem like it was going to be that. We've heard a lot of these things before with, SARS and the swine flu and Ebola and all these things. And so we thought, this is going to be another thing. It's not going to, we had no way to predict what was about to happen. And then March 15th, the governor says, we're issuing a stay-at-home order. Like literally, you need to stay in your house unless you have essential travel for 2 weeks. And I think when she said 2 weeks, we all said, that's reasonable. you know, if there's this real thing if we can all stay home for 2 weeks, and the other thing is we are probably thought, it might be nice to just stay home for 2 weeks, and just take a break. But it just didn't seem like that was all it was. But anyways, when that was when you heard that order come down, knowing that you're supposed to be opening right now, what was going through your mind?
Well, for me, it was, again, I come from a PhD background. So what I started tracking it back in January of what was happening overseas.
Yeah.
And so by the certainly by the 1st of March, I spent a lot of time looking at research, what was coming out of Italy, what was coming out of South Korea, places that we could access. There wasn't a lot coming out of China. But, so I had a fairly good understanding of what was available at that time. And so for me as a PhD, it was pretty clear of what this virus sort of was and its impact. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that was it was very clear that older people were being impacted. Younger people weren't being impacted at all, or very little. Mm-hmm. It was also clear that most of the older people that were impacted also had other pre-existing conditions. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of very clear, it was acting like the flu. I'm not saying it was like it's not similar to the flu, but it acted like the flu, and that means that the flu impacts those that are older.
With comorbidities.
With other comorbidities. It doesn't impact the young people or even middle-aged people. People recover from it, don't have symptoms. Right. So to me, it was like, okay, this is the flu, a little bit more impactful for that, but it wasn't a lethal virus.
Yeah.
It wasn't Ebola. Yeah. It wasn't anything that if you automatically get the virus, it was a death sentence.
Right.
So to me, that was very clear at beginning of March. And
you knew more about it than the rest of us.
Yeah, that to me was clear, and that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
After a year and a half. That's still the case.
The numbers still line up with that.
We don't always have data. That's another question I'd be able to look at comorbidity and number around deaths. But that to me was clear at the beginning. I'm saying, okay, well, we're gonna react and it's manageable. So what really triggered it was that sent everybody into a fear mode without being able to process anything other than fear.
Right.
Was really three things. One was there was a study that was released out of Britain that says this is going to kill millions of people unless you do something. Mm-hmm. That study has now been shown to be debunked, false assumptions. It was wrong. Yep. It was way over exaggerated. It wasn't scientifically a good model, but it was released and everybody understood it and said, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. We're going to have 1 million people hospitalized in a month in Michigan.
Yeah.
That was the understanding. And then the second with it, World Health Organization declared it a pandemic. Didn't mean anything other than it was showing up across the world.
That's all pandemic
right?
means.
That's all a pandemic
all around
means.
Everywhere,
right?
Yeah.
And as soon as the World Health Organization did that, then your professional sports teams said, we're canceling the season.
Yeah.
No government did anything. It was the professional sports season.
Yep. The NBA,
NCAA.
NCAA.
The NBA, we're canceling the season. And within 24 hours, everybody followed suit.
Yeah.
NCAA tournament with Michigan State. I still say they won the championship, but anyway. But, everything in 24 hours, non-governmental reaction was we're shutting everything down.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not even like the government responded and said, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
They followed suit based on this whole paradigm that was taking place.
Yeah.
So we all thought it was, 4 weeks? I said, okay, I'm reacting to this. I'm like, I don't understand all of this. It's like, I can't go outdoors. Why?
Right.
So for me, it was a really hard process on a scientific level. And then the business level, it's like, well, why can I go to the store and do that, but I can't do anything here in my business? And so I think that was all hard. And then what was really difficult from a policy standpoint for me was by the end of April, so we're 6 weeks into this, we peaked our hospitalizations at 4,000 patients at the beginning of April. By the end of April, we were less than 1,000. And cases went way down by the end of April. So we already hit the typical flu virus peak and then download.
The curve was flattened.
So I'm like, okay, we're good. everybody understands this, hospitals are ready, and then months and months and months of just, nope, you can't open up. That was hard. And from an economic standpoint, devastating.
Well,
Absolutely devastating.
And then here in Michigan, our governor particularly went well past her constitutional right of being able to make executive orders without legislative approval, and our legislature did fight back a little bit, and we wrote some policy to help them fight back, and then she still continued to make executive orders. 211 or something like that from March 15th to late October, mid-October, and then the Supreme Court ruled all of those executive orders are null and void. And so then she weaponized the health department and basically did the exact same thing through the health department.
Yeah, and
so that was challenging. As a business owner, you're trying to do the right thing because you love people. I mean, Dave, I've met very few people that love harder than Dave Skjaerlund. You love people. You don't want to hurt people or put people in harm's way. And that's all of us. We're trying to just do the right thing, but also we're trying to provide for our families and make sense of all this. And so it just made things very difficult.
No, it was. And I think the hard thing for me was the lack of ability to even have a discussion on it.
Right.
So when you wanted to at least get information, get different perspectives, I mean, we get different perspectives all the time, and it's a part of our responsibility as an individual to sort through those, learn through those, pick it up. But now we were saying, no, this information is not allowed, whether it's preventative treatments or treatment courses or what's actually happening, or what was really frustrating for most businesses, I think, is they felt like they didn't have a voice. So not even understanding why is it that I'm carrying the full brunt.
Right.
You're in a sense taking my business for a public good, but not really wanting to hear that discussion. And so I think that was really the big frustration is like, look, we could to not be able to talk through or have some of those discussions, or to not be able to share that because they were censored or shut down or politicized. I just felt like that. I mean, I don't politicize things. It's just
it was a real virus.
It was a challenge. So that's, for me, the reaction, my first reaction when I heard the fear come out, I went to God.
Yeah.
And I said, God, what's the perspective? How do I pray? So I developed 12 items to pray for. And then I published that in the paper. I published it in the Argus Press, the Independent, the Prayer of Faith. And that was kind of a response to give people a little context.
If you could send me that. If you have that still, we'll put that up on the screen as well so people can see that.
Yeah, so I mean, it was just a context of what's the right grid to process this, and how do we help businesses and medical professionals and individuals and people that do have older family members. And, you know, my wife's parents are older, and to not be able to see them, that was hard. Mm-hmm. Or to interact with them through a window, that was hard.
Yeah. And if you asked questions or had a difference of opinion based on research you had done, or in your case, science that you know and understand, you were considered a COVID denier or a science denier. And so I think the hardest part for me was I'm such a relational person too. The fact that, number one, I couldn't look people face to face, that's hard for me. But then even to try to have conversations, people got very pushed back. Well, it was such a hot topic.
I think COVID, the biggest tragedy of COVID is the attack on relational community and the relational fabric of humanity. Mm-hmm. And to me, for my core values, that's really hard when you tell people, and I have friends that are saying you've got to stay at home, and their addiction levels demand that they stay in community, and to see them go through addiction levels just go right back into full flame because the relational fabric has been cut off. Mm-hmm. So we saw that from families not being able to see families. We saw it from people relationally not to connect relationally. We saw that at the physical level, but then we see this, that we all understand that there's certain conversations, right? That people that used to be friends or have conversations, now you just avoid those conversations because it becomes so politicized. Yep. And I think that's the tragedy of COVID, is is yes, it's the tragedy of people who've gotten sick, and people that have died, but this has affected everybody.
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
This relational tearing of the fabric of humanity.
Well, what is something creative that you did during all this with your business to try to just stay afloat? You had very limited things you could do. What are some creative things you did to try to stay open, to keep your staff going a little bit, to be able to utilize the new business you had just opened?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to support staff the best we could, not just on payroll, but other ways, helping them to whatever their needs were, the best that we could to help them with staff to just kind of make it through. I mean, we took the approach that says, okay, we're going to operate within these guidelines, even if we didn't agree with these guidelines. Mm-hmm. What could we do to operate? Because we realize we're in the business trying to create a safe environment. But at the same time, what can we do to keep life going? So like last summer, we just said, look, we can't do anything indoors. Mm-hmm. So let's explore what we can do outdoors for those that are comfortable and want to come. So we started the Dinner in the Garden series last year. We did some things, the 2 weddings we did, we ended up paying for a tent, setting it up outside because they were comfortable. They still wanted to have their wedding.
Yeah.
So we did creative things like that. I think the real blessing for us outside of our normal operations that I have to give a shout out to is the YMCA and United Way that did the Shiawassee Soars.
Yep.
That was the free meal program.
Yep.
And I can't remember the number. It's like 15,000 free meals.
Yep.
But we cooked meals 3 times a week. People come, picked up, takeout. They were free meals. It was just a great way for us to, obviously it was huge for our staff.
Yep.
To be able to get paid, but just the connection in the community.
Absolutely.
Just to get people connected. And so, I mean, you adapted, you rolled, but for wedding venues, they really, and you can't, I don't think people realize that even with the restrictions that were being lifted earlier, you can't just flip a switch and say, we're going to throw a wedding tomorrow.
Yeah.
So wedding venues need months. And so there's been a lot of people that just wanted to celebrate weddings, marriages, and not knowing what they could do or how to do it.
Right.
So that was a real challenge, not for us, but for them as well.
And it's still a challenge today.
Yes.
And, I hear people saying things are getting back to normal, and I don't know that we're ever going to get back to normal. So I say getting back to pre-COVID times. But
no, it's definitely different.
Relative,
we've
right?
shifted, and people, it's going to take time to.
Yeah. I just came back from New York, and I was amazed that it's wide open.
Yeah.
It's wide open. I mean, I saw probably the entire time I was there for 5 days. And I was upstate, so I wasn't in the city. I know the city's still going through all kinds of restrictions, but upstate, in a much more heavily populated area than we're in here, I mean, I probably saw 20 masks the entire time I was there. I mean, employers, restaurants are full capacity, businesses are, so it's just it was different to see. I was actually surprised because New York has kind of been around the same type of restrictions we've had. I have friends out there, but I was amazed at how, it didn't even seem like anything.
Yeah, and you've got a year's worth of experience, so people are processing it through their own year of experience. They know what the risk is. You have vaccinations that are taking place, and you also are in the summer where you don't have a flu season in the summer for a reason.
Right.
So the risk level in the summer is really, really almost non-existent, and we're just not seeing the cases now. So,
well, I heard Bill Maher actually he reported a study that was done by, I believe, Stanford University that showed that 60% plus of Democrats that they, in their study, believed that if you get COVID, there was a more than 50% chance you would end up in the hospital.
Wow.
Then another 23% believed that it was in the 30 to 40% range that you would end up in the hospital. Then they, asked conservatives, Republicans, independents, what they thought, and they said it was around 1% to 2% that you would end up in the hospital. So I guess it all depends on what media you're listening to. It shows the politicization of this whole thing, because if two different parties can believe something completely different, it's obviously the politics they're listening to, not the science. And, I guess I would say that if I believed in my heart that there was a virus, that if I got it, there was a 50% chance I was going to the hospital, I probably would be a little more concerned about it than I was personally also. So that's why it's unfortunate when these things become political, because people's lives are really at stake and people's livelihoods are really at stake. And so it was very difficult to see that. But
no, I mean, we live in a soundbite
headlines.
Soundbite generation, soundbite media, social media, it's all soundbites. So we don't really break out, what those are. And I think the one of the hardest things, the perceptions is that we could actually stop every single death that happens. Mm-hmm. And it's just, there's nothing in life that we could ever stop anything from ever happening. Right. And at the same time, there's a lot of things we can do. So, I mean, at the Z Hall, we've had to walk that. It's not what I believe. It's walking to create that safe place and where people are at.
Making your guests feel comfortable.
People are what they want to feel comfortable, and taking those steps. And we've always had, through the things our staff have, been doing the pre-screening and the wearing the mask and the cleansing and all the things we can do as it. And then we work with, where people are at in their comfort levels. So.
Well, what is one piece of good advice that you would give to other business owners in our community out there that are also still trying to figure out how to navigate this?
I think it's the same advice that, I've kind of had to learn over the years that I've been told, is just keep the bigger perspective. So that's been helpful for me, is to realize there's always going to be short seasons that are seasons of highs, and there's going to be short seasons that are seasons of low. I've been dealing with climate change for years as a farmer. Yeah. There's always years where you got lots of rain. There's years you don't have rain. There's businesses where you got cycles that go. So I just think it's anything in life. We have seasons in our personal lives. And so just keeping the bigger perspective, I think, is really helpful. And then finding ways to laugh on a daily basis, even laughing at the challenges, laughing at what's going on. Because if we can't do that, then we're never going to have a frame of mind to be able to process and then stay open to creativity. What are the ideas? What can you do to innovate? Some of these are great opportunities for change. Yeah. So not all businesses are going to do business the way they used to do it, but those are opportunities to change and to modify. Yeah. So for us, yes, there's some things that change, but when it comes to the fabric of humanity,
that's right.
Relationships are relationships, and you got to have a human connection that can't be done over Zoom. It's just not
very true.
Can't be done long term.
Very true. Well, Dr. Dave, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to end the show with my favorite segment called Say It in 60. So I have 10 rapid-fire questions that I'm going to ask you. You have to answer them in 60 seconds. Now, you don't have to answer them right because they're your answers, so you can say whatever you want. But if you say them correctly in 60 seconds, I'm going to let you go home with that beautiful insulated AZ mug there. We're going to let you go home with it either way, but we'll just make it sound like it's a prize for the competition here.
These are 60 seconds apiece, right?
No. You got to give us quick answers, okay? So Dan has got 60 seconds on the clock.
Here, let me get a sip here to
enjoy
this before. Yeah.
60 seconds on the clock for you to give us quick answers of these things to dive into the mind of Dr. Dave Skjaerlund. All right, are you ready? Mm-hmm. Timer's ready? All right, here we go. Number 1, what is a must-read book?
Renee Brown's Dare to Lead.
What is a daily habit everyone should do?
Honor somebody else and tell them how amazing they are.
What is your favorite podcast?
Yours.
Well, thank you. What is a must-binge TV series?
Either NCIS or Jack Ryan.
What's your why?
Life is worth an adventure.
What's your best piece of advice?
Laugh more.
What is your favorite quote?
Oh boy, it's a Teddy Roosevelt's. It's better to be in the arena than not know victory or defeat.
Who do you look up to?
every day somebody around me that has a different gifting than I do.
All right. How much time we got? Seems like we got a lot of time here. What is success to you?
Success is different now. It's being well loved.
Being well loved. Very good job. He did it with how much time to spare? 8 seconds to spare.
Hey,
good
there we
job,
go.
Dr. Dave Skjaerlund.
Cheers.
Thank you for your participation in that, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and sharing your time with us. Before we go, if you want to look into that camera and tell our audience where they can find the Z Hall and how they can get information about that if they're looking to have an event.
All right, great. Well, obviously you can go to social media. The website is thezhall.com. You can look at The Z Hall on Facebook or any of our other social medias. And then you can always drive by, and you're welcome to walk through our garden. We're in Midtown, a little bit off the beaten path, but between Owosso and Corunna and Midtown. And then obviously come to any of our events and experience it.
Yeah, check it out. And if somebody wanted to get on your email list, can they do that from your website?
Yeah, so if you go to the website, we do have an events page. As we have events, we'll post them, but there's an email that pops up to get notified. And we don't do a lot of emails. It's more just notification.
When you have events, yep.
But we do have events and send out maybe once a month an email.
Very cool. Well, Dr. Dave, thank you so much for being here, man. I appreciate you sharing.
Thanks, Tony. You're amazing.
I appreciate you sharing your time with us.
I just want to say thank you for honoring and allowing people to tell their story in the community. Because I don't know of any other venue that allows the stories of businesses and individuals to be told. So just what you're doing in your podcast, it's amazing. I've enjoyed them.
It's fun for us. I appreciate that. You and 2 other people, so we appreciate that.
Kudos.
No, we have fun doing it. I love getting to know people. I too am a very relational person, so I love just getting the opportunity to sit down. I've learned so much about other businesses and business owners in our community, and there's just some amazing people around us. I mean, just incredible people. And so, little plug for us: if you want to get to know some of the business owners or business leaders in our community, listen to the podcast. I think this is episode number 70 or somewhere like that. We've done a lot of these, and just phenomenal way to get to know these people. You can even mute the parts where I talk if you want, but listen to their stories. It's excellent. They're fantastic. And so, again, thank you for joining us. We wish you the best of luck. Hopefully things will continue to go in the positive direction, and that the Z Hall will be providing excellent adventures and celebrations of life through love for people for many years to come. So thank you again. And if you're still watching, thank you for joining us. As my mother always said, you can't and never could until you tried. So go out there and try something great, my friends, and don't take the easy way out. We'll see you next time.